Hi everyone, welcome and thanks for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please do write them below. This video is a response actually to a question I got in the comments on my last video. So thank you very much to the person who asked this question. I have a question related to emotions. What do we do with emotions of others? Say someone is being angry and really loud, and it all feels pushy and scary. It's so easy to go on a guilt trip or get angry in return or close up and just want it to stop. Common sense says it's better to let the person say everything they want to say and just let the steam out and listen to them with compassion. But at that time, compassion is almost non-existent, and it feels there's no end to their emotion. They just go on and on and on. Like many men don't even try to listen to their women because the flow of words seems endless. Also, sometimes it looks as if there's absolutely no point in being emotional. And there's a strong feeling that this person is having a tantrum with no reason whatsoever. It's like they're just crazy. That often happens with women. So thank you for your question. There's actually a lot in there. And it's very difficult to talk about different situations because every situation is different. But I can imagine this, what you're describing. And I am not an expert. I'm not a master of this. It's so very difficult, and I can relate to it, the difficulty. But I will say something. So there's two things. One is how to look after yourself, and how the other is how to look after others or how to help others. And I think if you want to help others, actually the first step is to look after yourself. That's a very good motivation, actually. In the Buddhist tradition, they call that bodhicitta motivation, which means that you want to, or you say to yourself, I want to develop myself so that I can not only help myself, but help all beings, everyone I meet, to reach their potential, Buddhahood. But if you don't have any idea what that means, that's okay. It's still good to want to help others, and the first step is to help yourself. So how do you help yourself? Well, you have to work on your triggers and awareness of well, awareness that you have triggers. So, for example, when we are young, we have maybe have experiences of our parents or authority figures being angry with us, and that's quite frightening. And then we get reminded of that when we are adult in a relationship. And so that's an example of a trigger. So if we're in a situation with someone who is angry, like you said, being very loud, raising their voice, maybe even threatening, then you need to establish some kind of boundary of what you doing what you need to do. Doing what is right for you in that moment, which may be the boundary of I can't accept this. And then you just take care of yourself and remove yourself somehow, or if that's not possible, yeah, it's very difficult to talk generally about this, but finding some way to work with your own emotions first. It's very difficult to work with somebody else if you're freaking out. But if you can work with somebody else, that's really good, because it really can be good for them. You know, I think in general, there's too much distance between people and not enough communication, not enough honesty. So I think if there's a sense of being willing to listen, being willing to stay with it and not close up, as you say, or get angry, which are habitual reactions, and they are they're kind of liberated by awareness of the triggers. And if we can feel ourselves being moved in a familiar, habitual way like this, then we can I don't know, take a deep breath and just decide, okay, now I'm just going to relax and just try something different to stay with it instead. And that might feel like zero compassion. Actually, zero compassion is a phrase. It's like a technical name for just having the wish to have compassion. And you can't actually feel it, but you just have the wish. And that in itself is compassion. Just having the wish to stay there is compassion. And to stay there and not run away, not build a wall between you and the other person, that helps them. And it may actually strengthen your relationship with them, because you're giving them time. You're giving them a chance to, as you say, vent the steam. And that can help. So with steam, it may appear that it's endless, but it never is. It may appear endless when we're trying to get away from it, but if we actually just let it be, then eventually it gets less. I mean, quite quickly. It comes in an arc and rises to a peak and then has its own, it spends its own energy, and then the energy runs out. And so remembering the nature of impermanence of emotions is a very useful view to have. And also the view that emotions themselves are not threatening. They can motivate threatening behavior, which is violent. And of course, that's scary, that's dangerous, etc. But the behavior and the emotion are not the same thing. And if somebody just has an emotion which they are expressing, it might seem threatening, but the emotion itself is not. So if you can have that view as well, and be careful, but there may be a sense of maybe fearlessness towards the emotion, which I think in general, most people are afraid of emotions when they shouldn't be. Like I said in my last video, emotions are not, they're not bad. They don't have anything in them that can hurt us. So yeah, common sense is, like you say, it's better to let the person speak, but you don't want them to. So that's the issue. That's your emotion. And again, it's your boundary. It's where do you draw the line of what is acceptable to you, and that's your choice. But it's important to recognize that there's a difference between what you can accept and what the other person is allowed to do. So your own boundaries are your responsibility, and your reactions are your responsibility, and your well-being is your responsibility, not theirs. And if you can communicate to them what your needs are clearly, calmly, that might it might help to make the situation better. And if it doesn't, then there's clearly some deeper issue than just the present emotion. And yeah, it depends on the relationship that you have with that person. It's so varied. I mean, it totally depends on the other person's level of maturity, and what is their relationship to you. Really depends on all of that. You mentioned going on a guilt trip. Well, again, that's your own habitual pattern, which is kind of the same thing as a trigger, really. We just follow our own patterns, and having awareness of that is what I think we need as the first step in freeing ourselves from those things. Mm. Also having the sense that mm, everything is workable. Like we're not victims. We're not stuck. We're not trapped in our own prison of our own making. We hold the key and we can unlock it anytime we want with intention and awareness and essentially with compassion. So yeah, I would say staying with it in itself is compassion. And you mentioned men and women, like women are seen as crazy because their emotions don't have a point. Well, why do they need to have a point? I mean, whatever we say can be pointless in a way, but there's still some communication which brings people together. And the point is that we have emotions. They are a part of life. They are real in a sense. And I kind of said it in the last video, but I think if we can accept our emotions and see them as something valid that needs to be acknowledged, that needs to be um, treated kindly, then if we can do that for ourselves, automatically we will do that for others, especially those we care about. And I guess this is kind of a question about close relationships. So if we're in a close relationship with someone who is expressing emotions and it gets um, difficult for us, then we need to be clear about that and communicate that and understand the difference between our reaction and the other person's emotion, because they're not making us feel di the difficulty. Our own patterns are making us feel that. They are maybe wanting to express something um, for any kind of reason, but I don't think they are trying to make us feel bad necessarily. So not taking it personally. I mean, take it personally if they are trying to make you feel bad, that is possible too. But that's a deeper issue, isn't it? I think in general, if somebody that we're close to has an emotion, they're not expressing it to make us feel bad. And if it does feel bad, that's not their intention. So yeah, having the awareness of what is their intention. It's one thing. Having the awareness of what is our own reaction and is it habitual? And can we stay with it or can we not? And do we need to create a boundary? Can we take responsibility for that boundary? And can we stay with it and listen to that person? And if we listen to that person, that can help them because they feel heard. And it can also model for them the way that you have made friends with yourself. So I think you can't really help anyone before helping yourself. And the more you help yourself, the more automatically you are in a position to spontaneously model for others and hold space for others to just let their emotions ride out through the natural arc of energy as it rises and falls. So maybe that helps. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you very much for your question and see you soon.